Okay, folks, welcome back. This is our second video. This is number two. Second video for the respiratory system. Okay, for the respiratory system. So part two, you should have three parts: part one, part two, and part three. So this is part two. So part two is the most technical one of all three. So this is the physiology of the lungs that you need to know. The physiology of the lungs. So what I wanted you guys to know is just the main gist. If you kind of get the ideas of the lungs is very complex. As you can tell, what's going on with the COVID-19 that we have now. It's very complex. So a lot of things can happen to the lungs and could affect your breathing. Okay, so we're gonna go over some of those mechanisms that cause you to have problem with your breathing. So before we do that, let's jumpstart. What is the only organ that can float on water, folks? Take a guess. Not too hard to guess. So we've been talking about only one organ in this one. This is the lung. So, okay, how fast you sneeze? Achoo. So this one is 112 miles per hour. So imagine, it's faster than the Ferrari car. So you don't have to look for it, just right in your nose. Could go really fast. Okay, here we go. So the first concept that we're going to talk about is ventilation. Ventilation. When we talk about ventilation, think of a vent where the air comes out. So ventilation, vent. Pulmonary ventilation is when you have the air going in and out, in and out. So that's the ventilation. So when you hear that word, always think of the air that goes going in and out outside of your lungs. Okay, so this is a huge concept, how you actually breathe, the way you breathe. So let me kind of draw a little tiny diagram here to the best of my ability. Okay, so this is the casing of your lung. You have the casing, we talked about the casing before, the parietal pleura. And then inside you actually have your lungs in here. Okay, let's draw your lungs. So this is your lungs here. Okay, so this is your lungs. This is the casing on the outside of your lungs, and this is the space, that visceral space. You have the liquid there. Okay, and you have the atmosphere pressure. Okay, so let's call the atmosphere pressure P1. P1. The pressure inside is called P2. Okay, so P2, and the pressure that's between the lungs and the parietal pleura, okay, the visceral and the parietal, is called P3. Okay, so that's P3. So you have P1, P2, and P3. When you breathe the air in, when you actually breathe the air in, your P1 is greater than your P2, and your P2 is greater than your P3. Okay, so when your P1, when your air, which is when you inhale, okay, this is when you inhale, your P1 is greater than P2. So everything goes in order, folks. 1, 2, and 3. Okay, so P1 greater than P2, and P2 is greater than P3. So air always travel, again, just like anything else, travel from the high to low. So you're going from high to low. So that's when you have the air go inside your lungs. Okay, so when P1 greater than P2, P2 greater than P3, air goes inside your lungs. Okay, simple mechanism, and we're gonna go in a little bit more of how that mechanism actually works. But this is a simple mechanism where you have higher pressure will drive into the lower pressure, make your air go inside your lungs. Okay, so this is what we call pressure gradient. The pressure outside is different than pressure inside your lung, and different than the pleural cavity in your lungs as well. Okay, so let's just say, just pretend, let's pretend if I were to stab you in your chest, and I just use a knife and then just stab you, just on the outside of your parietal pleura, not to the inside part of your lung, just the outside, and make a nice little hole. Okay, so when you do that, you have this little hole. So your P1 and your P3, you're gonna have that hole connect one to another. So your P1 and P3 become the same. when your P1 and P3 become the same, your P2, your pressure inside your lungs become, your lungs actually collapse. Your lungs become very, very small. You just collapse down. Your lungs just collapsing down. So that little hole will cause your lungs to collapse into a little tiny lungs, okay, about the size of your fist. This is called atelectasis, when your lungs collapse. Okay, if you ever had that happen to you, one thing to do outside in the field is just to plug the hole. Don't let any more things get into the hole. So, and take them to the hospital. What we do is we take out, we have to repressurize your lungs. We have to, your P3 is almost like a vacuum, so we need to suck out a lot of air to make your lungs grow again. Okay, so so your P1 is greater than P2, P2 greater than P3. That's when you breathe in. Okay, when your P2 is greater than P1, so let's put in this another color. So when your P2 is greater than P1, this is when your air is coming out, and your P3 always the less of the fewest, because that's almost the vacuum. So when that happens, you're gonna force the air to come out. So that's when you exhale. Okay, you exhale, you're forcing out that air. You're forcing your P2 to be higher, and then the air will come out from your mouth, from your nose. Okay, so the pressure gradient goes both ways. Your atmospheric pressure, when you breathe in, your pressure outside is greater than your lungs, so the air goes in, and when you breathe out, the pressure inside is greater than the outside. You force out the air. So how does that happen? How does that occur? So we're going to talk about that on the bottom here, this little bottom portion here. This is something called intrapulmonary pressure. Intrapulmonary pressure. Okay. So keep this in mind when your lungs. Okay, when you have your lungs. This is called something called Boyle's law. Boyle's law. What I'm going to do is I'm going to show you what Boyle's law looks like, what Boyle's law is, and then we could discuss about that. Okay, so let me pump in a couple air. Let's pump in air for you. You have tons of air molecule in here now. Okay, you have lots of air molecule bouncing around, just like a little ping pong ball bouncing around all over the place here. Okay, look at the pressure. Right now the pressure here is at 76.4 as at the atmosphere pressure. Okay, 76.4. Okay, so when you breathe in, you pull down your diaphragm. Your diaphragm contracts. You pull down your diaphragm. Your lungs become bigger. Okay, when I increase the volume, what's going to happen if I increase the volume? If I increase the volume, just like when you pull down that diaphragm, your lungs become bigger. But look at what happened to the pressure. Your lungs become bigger, but your pressure actually dropped. Your pressure inside your lungs dropped. It went from 74 down to 50.9, so 51. So it went from 74 to 51. So this is how your lungs work. Your diaphragm, you pull down the diaphragm, your lungs expand. When become bigger, you have more volume, higher the volume goes up, the pressure goes down. It's the opposite. So the Boyle's law, what you need to remember for Boyle's law is pressure goes up, volume goes down. Okay, pressure goes up, volume goes down, and pressure goes down, volume goes up. Pressure goes down, volume goes up. So it's always the opposite. So when the volume goes up, pressure goes down. When the volume goes down, pressure goes up. Okay. So when you inhale the air, you contracting diaphragm goes down. Your volume, your lungs become bigger. So your lungs expand. So the volume goes up, your pressure goes down, so therefore the pressure outside becomes greater, so the air rush into your lungs. Okay, air rush into your lungs. So when you increase the volume of your lungs, the pressure went down, and then the air goes into your nose, into your lungs. Look at what I do, what happened when I make this smaller. Okay. When the volume goes down, so I reduce the size of this, so you have less, so the volume goes down. When the volumes go down, the pressure goes up. The pressure goes up. You see how high this pressure is? 152. Start from the 74. We start from 74. Now it's 152. So guess what? As you breathe out, as your diaphragm relaxes, it pushes up the lung. Make the lungs become smaller, so the volume goes down, the pressure inside your lungs is higher. Okay, the volume goes down, but the pressure go higher. Okay, so when the pressure goes higher, it forces the air out. So the air from the inside is greater than the air outside, so then you force out the air. So you will breathe out your air. Okay, so keep that in mind. Okay, so this is a huge concept to memorize. You're going to see this concept in your exam, guarantee. So Boyle's law states that if your lungs expand, if the volume goes up, your pressure gonna goes down. Okay, if the volumes goes down, the pressure gonna go up. Okay, inside your lungs. So keep that in mind. Muscle that help with your respiratory, the main one is the diaphragm. Your diaphragm actually a big muscle that actually help with your respiratory. You have also scalene, which is here. If you feel your clavicle, you have a little dip here in your clavicle. There's actually 3 muscles there. Some of you, these actually are tight, really tight. Press there, you're gonna feel it. It's gonna hurt like crazy if those muscles are tight. Some people like to carry their problem in their chest and their shoulder, so they tend to roll their shoulder forward, or they lift up their shoulder really high. With these folks, they can have problem breathing. So you're going to notice that you don't breathe. When you get nervous, your breathing tend to go off very easily. And these scalene muscle are going to be really, really tight. So the tighter it is, that means you need to relax more. You need to massage that muscle. During the massage, it's painful, but afterward, you will breathe much better. Intercostal is between your ribs. These also help expanding your ribs. Pec minor, serratus anterior, SCM, and electrospinae, all of those help with your breathing. All of those does help with your breathing. So if you ever seeing an athlete after they, while they're playing a game, they oftentimes put their hands on their hip, but they don't dip like we dip, you dip. No, they don't dip, but just put their hand on their hips. So what that does is actually it fixes their scapula and then relax their muscles, so they could actually breathe better. Or if you see basketball player or football player, when during the game they tired, they put their hands on their knees and then lean forward. That actually help them also fix the scapula, help them breathe a lot better as well. Okay. So again, mechanism that we talked about in terms of breathing, okay, something you need to remember is actually will be on your exam. Okay, so when the diaphragm, which is here, when the diaphragm pulls down, okay, when your diaphragm contracts, it pulls down, your lungs expand, your lung actually become bigger, okay, bigger, more volume. Boyle's law, more volume. What happens to the pressure? The pressure goes down, okay? You have increased volume, pressure goes down, so therefore the air would rush in because you have higher pressure on the outside, forcing the air to come in to the inside your lungs because your pressure decrease, your pressure inside your lungs goes down. Plain and simple. Contraction happen. Your diaphragm pulls down, makes your lungs bigger, more volume, less pressure. Less pressure, the air comes in from the outside into your lungs. So you breathe your air in. Okay, so Boyle's law, okay, so remember that. So all of this explaining the same thing I just did, just with more complex word. Okay, so simply put, if you understand that concept that I just told you, that's good. Expiration is the opposite, which I explained earlier too. Okay, your diaphragm relax, push up the lungs, reduce the volume of the lung. When you reduce the volume of the lung, you increase the pressure. When you increase the pressure, you breathe out the air. There are two types of expiration. You have passive, which you do on a normal basis. If you're not aware of it, this is what you do. You're just relaxing your diaphragm, going through the mechanism we just talked about. Decrease your lungs, decrease the volume, increase the pressure goes out. But there's also time that you actually force out your air as well, called forced expiration. This is when you're tired, okay? When you're tired and you literally want to breathe out your air, you go, so that's the forced expiration. You're not using just your diaphragm. So think of this, you're not just using your diaphragm, you're using your ribs, all of your ribs, your ab muscle, okay, your abdominal muscle, to force out that air. Just thinking like you're squeezing the balloon, you're squeezing out the balloon. So you're squeezing out the air, okay? So you're using all of your muscle to squeeze out that air so you could breathe better. Okay, so just think of the muscle contraction causing the air to go out. Some of these stuff, you guys could welcome to look at it, just mechanism that we do in terms of breathing. You have cough, sneeze, laughing, hiccups, and yawn. So cough is just basically just irritation, closing down of your glottis, causing the release of air. Sneeze, basically if you have something kind of in your nose, and upper respiratory stuff, you're trying to get rid of it by forcing those out. Okay, laughing, pretty much just kind of short little series of air that's kind of popping out. That's laughing. Hiccups think of it like it's not in sync. Your lungs and your diaphragm are not in the same page. Not on the same page. So your lungs is one rhythm and your diaphragm is another rhythm. So it doesn't match the rhythm, so causing you to have hiccups. Okay? And we don't know about yawns. We don't know why you're yawning. So I will talk about this slide. This slide I will talk about on a separate video that actually just focus on this. This has to do with your this has to do with your lab. So I'm going to talk about it in your on a lab video. But you will see some of the question on your exam as well, unit exam, lecture exam, as well as the lab exam. Okay, you will have questions regarding these on both. What is air? Okay, what is air? Air is, you guys been told ever since kindergarten that you're breathing in oxygen and you breathe out carbon dioxide. Breathe in oxygen, breathe out carbon dioxide. Plants breathe out, plants breathe in carbon dioxide and breathe out oxygen. Okay, so that's what you've been told, and let me tell you, those are lies. Yes, those are lies. You don't actually just breathe in oxygen. You breathe in a whole bunch of gases. You have all kinds of gases. You have nitrogen. You have oxygen. You have other gases. CO2 is made up about 0.04. Actually, I'm dropping 0. That's 0.04. Should be another 0 here. So 0.04% of the gas in the air. Okay, so the rest, majority is the nitrogen. We live on this planet. Earth has lots of nitrogen, and 21% of that is oxygen. And we breathe in about 21% of oxygen, and we breathe out approximately, depending on the person, could be between 16 to 18% out. Okay, so we use about 2 to 3%. We keep that into our body, 2 to 3%, but we breathe a lot out as well. So people think, when you someone breathing out, that's all pure carbon dioxide, but no. you're breathing out just about 0.01 or 0.02% of the CO2 that you breathe in. So it would go up from 0.4 to 0.606 or 0.209, somewhere around there. So not that much, very, very small number that goes up. But we use a lot more oxygen going in than breathing out CO2. So technically speaking, humans are not, but by ourselves, by us alone, we do not contribute to global warming because we don't breathe out enough CO2. Okay, but what we do contributes to global warming. It's all us that to blame on. Okay, so not just what we breathe out that causes global warming. What we do, like factory production, have a lot of CO2. Meat consumption, a lot of meat actually, cows and pork, they poop out methane, and that actually contributes to a huge part of the ozone, those methane that they poop out. So there's other things that cause CO2. What we do, we raise livestock so we could eat them. So that's caused more CO2 than driving cars all year long. So those things causing the CO2 level to go up. Not just from our breathing, but what we do more. So again, this is something you need to know. Just make a mark on this. I will ask you this on your exam. So Earth atmosphere, you have all of this. I just mentioned 78%, 21%, 0.04%. But just imagine this: if you increase, for the light. If you increase let me turn down the light. Here we go. There you go. So if you increase it by 10%, if you increase CO2 in your blood by 10%, you will double your respiratory rate. Okay, you could try this at home, but be careful. So if you hold your breath, try to hold your breath as long as you can. Okay, you will get to the point. Eventually, you need to breathe. So do breathe. Don't just hold your breath until you die. No, just hold your breath, and you will breathe. Once you breathe, you're going to increase level of CO2 in your body because you don't breathe out. You could breathe in. You could breathe in as long as you want. But if you don't breathe out, you're going to build up that CO2 level. Once you build up CO2 level, once you start breathing again, you actually will breathe almost double. Just increase by 10% of that CO2 in your blood. You will start breathing double the respiratory rate. What do I mean? Normally people breathe about 12 to 14 breaths per minute. So if you hold your breath for about 30 seconds to 1 minute, you may end up breathing about 24 breaths per minute. So you could double your CO2, your breath, your respiratory rate. So Boyle's law talks about the volume and the pressure. Okay, the volume, the pressure. Henry's law, so that one we talk about bringing the air in. How is your lungs work? How does your lungs bring in the air? This one, Henry's law, talks about how do you actually put that air into your blood. The gas exchange that happened in your lung, in your alveoli, how does that happen? How does that gas get in from the air into your blood? Okay, so keep this in mind. Couple of things to keep this in mind. One, okay, the more pressure you have, the higher the pressure, the easier the gas will go into your blood. Okay, the easier you have more gases will exchange with your blood. If you have more pressure, the less pressure you have, the less gas will go into your blood. Plain and simple. Okay, this is less pressure, less gas. More pressure, more gas go into your blood. Okay, so just imagine this. When you go up in elevation, let's say you're going into an airplane, you're going into the mountain. If say you want to hike Mount Everest, okay, as you go up in that elevation, the air becomes thinner. Okay, you have less pressure. Let's say you go into space, you have less pressure. That's why the astronaut wear spacesuits, so they actually put pressure onto their body because there's no pressure pressing on their skin. So when you have less pressure, you have less gas exchange. So if you think of time, you go into the airplane. Most airplane nowadays, they pressurize the cabin about 8,000 feet. Even at 8,000 feet, for some people, have trouble breathing in the air. They feel like you can only breathe all the air into your lungs. You feel like it's not a full breath because of that 8,000 feet elevation. As you go up, you have less pressure to push stuff inside to your lungs. When you come back down from the airplane, now you feel much better because now your pressure is more, so you actually will be able to push that air into your bloodstream, okay, into your gas exchange. So keep that in mind. As you go up, less air. As you come down, you have more air. So if you were, let's say, you're born outside of this Earth, let's say there are people that are going to go to Mars, and there's someone born in Mars. Mars has less pressure than we do, less pressure than Earth. So when they come back, they will have a hard time breathing on Earth. Will have a lot hard time breathing on Earth. Okay. This is also something to remember. So remember Henry's law. Henry's law in terms of the gas exchange. You also remember this as well. So CO2 is 20 times as soluble as oxygen. So meaning that if you compare the two gases between oxygen and CO2, CO2 be able to dissolve in your blood a lot better than oxygen does. Okay, CO2 would be able to go into your blood very quickly and easily, unlike your oxygen. Okay, so this is something you do need to know. This is what we call the hemoglobin curve. Hemoglobin curve. So on this side is the pulse ox, which is the oxygen amount of percent of oxygen in your blood. If you let's see, where did it go? Yes. So if you ever use one of these guys here, this is the pulse ox machine. Okay, pulse ox machine. So you put on your fingers and it'll tell you what's the percentage. Okay, normal folks, you want to be at 90 or above, which is right here. So 90 or above. Okay, so somewhere around here. So you want to stay above 90. Above 90. So about somewhere around here. So very small window. Very small window. So you want to be at 90 above. This also I would highly recommend, especially this time with pandemic. You want to keep one of these because if your pulse ox is anything below 90, 91, you need to take yourself to the ER. Okay, so if you cough at home, you have fever, that's fine. But if you have one of these and shows that your pulse ox, your oxygen level in your blood is less than 91 or 90%, you need to go to ER ASAP. Okay, this is something good to have. I would recommend having this in every home. Okay, so looking at that, we're gonna talk a little bit more. Something that you need to know for your exam. Okay, in one hemoglobin. So in your blood cell, your red blood cell looks like this. Okay, your concave. There's actually tons of hemoglobin. There's thousands of hemoglobin in your blood cell. So one of them, which is this tiny little dot there, could hold up to 4 oxygen molecules. You could have 4 oxygen molecule here. Okay, it's 1, 2, 3, 4. So you have 4 of them could attach onto one hemoglobin. Something to keep in mind. Okay, and we're gonna talk about this curve really quick. This curve, something you do need to know. Okay, so the curve is in the middle, the black one, this black line. This is a hemoglobin curve that I just showed you earlier. Same thing, saturation of oxygen inside your blood, 0 to 100%. Okay, and you need to know the differences between right shift and left shift. Right shift is meaning it moved to the right. Okay, right shift, move to the right. Okay, move to the right. So it moved to the right. When it moves to the right, your temperature, you tend to be hot. So you tend to have fever. You will become acidic, and you will have less ability to grab onto O2. You're going to have more carbon dioxide. Okay, this is what we call a Bohr's effect. So all of these terms you should know. So moving to the right, you have less oxygen, more CO2, you become more acidic, lower pH, more acidic, and this is called Bohr's effect. So right side. So people who have COVID-19 and in the ICU, and you see them, in the bed, trouble breathing in ICU, all of them have this shift to the right. You have right shift. Their temperature body goes up. They have fever, 43 degrees Celsius or more or less. Okay, so temperature goes up. They couldn't breathe, so their O2 goes down. Their CO2 goes up. And this is called Bohr's effect. So it's moving to the right. You have the left shift, which is the opposite. It's moving to the left here. Your temperature goes down, so you become cold. So your temperature goes down. You actually have more affinity to oxygen, so you actually have more oxygen in your body. You have very little CO2, and you're gonna have your body gonna become basic. So as you shift to the right, your body become basic. You have less CO2, more oxygen. Your body become basic. Shift to the left. Okay, so know the different shifts, whether it's the right shift or left shift. Okay, that's going to be on your test. Another term that's going to be on your test is called Haldane effects. Haldane effects. This is the effects where your hemoglobin cannot pick up any CO2. Okay, your hemoglobin cannot pick up CO2. This is just very similar to the right shift. So your hemoglobin cannot pick up CO2. Therefore, your body increase your CO2. You have more CO2, higher level of CO2. When you have higher level CO2, you become acidic. Okay, you become acid. Writing with the pad is not fun. So acidic. So you become acidic. You become acid. Okay. That's this whole concept. What does this mean? This means your hemoglobin, your red blood cells cannot attach CO2 to it. This is called Haldane effect. You cannot attach to CO2. Your CO2 goes up. When your CO2 goes up, you become more acidic. And you become more acidic, you could have whole bunch of other problems comes along. Medulla oblongata, this is where you control your breathing. I talked to you more about this already, about how it actually controls your heart rate as well. So if you sever this, you will stop breathing as well as stop your heart rate. Okay, inspiration neuron fire during inspiration, expiration neuron fire during forced expiration. So straightforward, nothing to worry about. So just know that medulla is to help with your breathing, medulla oblongata, not madness or aggression, like Mama said. Okay. So let's see. The rest of these you guys could just review. Yep, just these two slides you guys could review. Pretty straightforward. You have the vagus nerve control. You have the sensory vagus nerve, the control. That's coming down from medulla oblongata, coming down with vagus nerve, right on top of the aortic body, carotid body, to help innovate, measuring the pH, measuring your CO2 level, your oxygen level. Usually is your body controlled by CO2. So just to just FYI, just knowing that your body, your CO2 actually control your respiration, not your O2, not your oxygen, but your CO2 actually control your respiration. How fast your respiration goes based on how much CO2 you have in your body. Okay. quick thing, just kind of explaining. Actually, I forgot to put this on my third video, so but just quick thing, talk about the COVID-19, just how it actually happened. So if you, for those of you who haven't followed the news, so the COVID-19, one interesting thing is a virus that actually get through into your body through openings like your eyes, your nose, your mouth. Those are the most common part that would go into your body. And once it go in, it actually, the way it does is attack your cell, in your own human cell, in order for them to reproduce. Just like any viruses, in order for it to reproduce, it has to go into your human cells, make your kind of fool your cells to use your own part, your human part, to make more viruses. Okay, use your human part to factory more viruses. So virus is kind of like a parasite. They need you to make more of them, so they cannot make more of themselves. So they need you to reproduce for them. So they will actually fool your DNA, change your DNA of your cells to actually make more viruses. It will start affecting your upper respiratory first. It will affect your nose and your throat. So you will start coughing. The first week is actually usually a mild to moderate symptoms. Some of you may not even have symptoms at all, but you may have mild to moderate. You might have coughing because it start attacking cells around here in your throat, in your larynx, in your oral pharynx, around there. Okay, it may affect your nose as well. You may have nasal discharges and sputum coming out. But after the first week, okay, if you're unfortunate, your body cannot fight it off, it will go down into your lungs. Okay, it will make its way down into your lungs. And once it goes into your lungs, okay, one interesting thing is it actually will, your immune system will respond. Your immune system will come over and trying to kill the viruses. But this virus is very smart. They actually fool your immune system. The reason a lot of people have problem with this is the virus actually fool your immune system to kill itself, to kill your own cell, to kill human cells. So now your immune system is not just killing the virus, but also kill the surrounding cell around it. Okay, it's the surrounding cell, your lung cells. So you gonna see a permanent damage in your lungs. For those of you who actually have a critical condition, that 20% of people that end up in a hospital or have a more moderate to severe condition have a permanent damage inside your lungs because your immune system start attacking your own lungs. Okay, and what it also does is lower it lowers your immune system in your body, that also inviting the bacteria to start growing, causing your lungs to actually have pneumonia, causing you to have liquid inside your lungs. Okay, so that's the severity of the symptom. Usually will show up in the second week. So you could see from recently famous person, Boris Johnson, the prime minister of England, was fine during the first week, and then second week he actually then end up in a hospital because that's when you have that bacteria, that higher level of bacteria start producing liquid inside your lungs. This is when you hear people talking about the combination of medication to treat this disease. You use the antiviral to lower the load of the virus, to lower the virus count, but also antibacterial to actually help killing the bacteria that producing liquid inside your lungs. If we cannot control the liquid inside your lungs will actually full with liquids and you won't be able to breathe, and eventually you will die. So that's when that's in a lot of cases, that's what happened in Italy, and that's happening now here in the US, where you have too much liquid in your lungs and you cannot breathe, and that's when you end up dying. Okay, so thank you for listening. If you like this video, please push the thumbs up button. Click any comments if you have any question. I'll read all of your comments and I'll answer all of your questions. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you on next video.